我先开始录制了，以防待会儿忘记。趁这个时间给大家介绍一下这个老外。这老外我也不熟啊，他是一个综合病害管理的专家，综合病虫害管理。综合病虫害管理说起来也没什么，说起来挺简单的，但是你真正操作的时候就会发现很麻烦，但是效果是非常好的。如果你有过1、2年这个大棚里面种菜的经验，你就会知道，如果你综合虫害管理没有做好的话，综合病虫害管理没做好的话，会是什么情况？现在有一些朋友已经进来了，但是这个老外还没来啊，所以我们等到10分，再等4分钟。如果他不来的话，我就开始播放了。反正我都是提前叫他们录好屏了，人不来也没事，就是问答时间就没有了。比较可惜。这个综合从病虫害管理的问答呃还是很重要的。大家可以回到这个周博士那边，等10分的时候，如果你对这个话题感兴趣的话，再回来这边看。我这个手机上好多人找不着北啊，不知道怎么进这个会议室。因为是系列会议，都搞不清楚。我已经提前好几天把这个网站上面都发好，都发清楚了，很多人他也不看，这时候就来找我了。我也没工夫回他们，没有办法，大家看不到的，到时候看回放也可以。还有一分钟，还有一分钟我就开始播放了啊。这位综合病害管理专家在美国还是有一定名气的。这种小众的这种行业，他的各种频道上面的粉丝还是很多的。这鬼佬也没回我消息，所以我们就这样就开始了。嗯，现在差不多10分了啊。因为他录屏的时候声音比较轻啊，所以我播放的时候他声音肯定也比较轻了，无所谓，大家看字幕就可以了。我现在开始播放了，能看得到的话，大家发个消息啊。
China specifically. I am a consultant in agriculture, and I have been for.
等一下，我好像放错了一个视频啊，这个好像没字幕嘛。这一个。
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Gates. I am an integrated pest management specialist. And today I've been asked to talk about some aquaponic crop pests, and particularly ones that will be important for those growing in aquaponics in China specifically. I am a consultant in agriculture, and I
大家
have been
能不能
for
看到，
about
能不能
10
听到
years
声音？
now
吱一声啊。
under the banner of Zenthanol Consulting. And I can be found on various social media platforms as well as my email address here. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My Mandarin is not very good, but I did spend some time in China, and I was able to work in certain agricultural sectors, mainly in Beijing and also in the south of China as well. And if you have any interest in working together, I would be happy to do so. There are 5 main families or techniques of integrated pest management. There are the biological, living biocontrol agents, the chemical, synthetic, or naturally occurring compounds, cultural, which are environmental or procedural changes, genetic, which are inherent genetic resistances in the plants, and mechanical, which are physical methods of control. These 5 groups encompass most of the various ways that pests can be treated, and when used together, these can be considered an integrated platform that is very complex but also very sophisticated and doesn't rely on any one individual type of control. Here is an example of integrated pest management and the various techniques working together. On the right, we can see some crop scouting happening. This is a diagram of crop scouted data for a pest called the American serpentine leaf miner, or the leaf miner fly, and its parasitoid wasp biocontrol agent called diglyphate. And we can track the parasitoid, the beneficial biocontrol agent, and the pest together. And as the pest population increases, the biocontrol increases. When the pest population decreases, so too does the parasite wasp. There's also an example here on a plant of biological control. Amblyseius swirsky here is the predatory mite that is commonly used across most of the world for control of thrips, silverleaf whitefly, as well as broad mite and various russet mites too. You can also incorporate glue traps. Yellow sticky card traps are very commonly used in Europe and North America, as well as South America, for the mechanical control of pests and also to sample incoming pests so you can know what's going on season to season, year to year, but also week to week. Mechanical controls also include barriers, mesh screen. Mesh screen is a very important facet of IPM, and if you can keep pests from coming into your facility, then you can save tons of money on pesticidal applications, labor costs for removal, plants, and also the lost cost of the damage incurred by pest presence. In addition, you can also remove pests entirely, physically by hand, which can be useful in some cases, especially before applying a chemical application or a biocontrol agent to control the rest that might still be around ambiently in the population. So what are some examples of biocontrols? Well, I have 2 videos here on my YouTube channel where I talk about mealybug destroyer, which is a lady beetle, Cryptolaemus montroseri, and it feeds on the mealybug, which is a very common pest in aquaponics as well as hydroponics, like in this case, Gerbera daisies being grown in California. And on the right, there's a video about Diglyphus zeae, which is being affected by another biocontrol agent called Uvaria bassiana. Indeed, some organisms that are used for biocontrol include entomopathogenic fungi or bacteria or bacteria that feed on other organisms like pests. One species of pest that might be more of a problem in aquaponics in North America, but might also appear in China, is the strawberry beetle Stellodota geminata, which is very much attracted to rot, Fusarium, Pythium, when plants are infected or when fruits and flowers are infected by botrytis, fungus, and yeast. The resulting fermentation can attract these beetles in large numbers, and then those beetles feed on the yeast and spread it to other plants. If you apply a beneficial microbe, you can control the primary infection from wounds, and you can also control the pest beetle at the same time. Predatory mites like Amblyseius swirsky, like I've said before, are very commonly used against thrips and whitefly, and also various small mites like broad mites and russet mites. And this is very commonly found in peppers. These pests are very, very common in lettuce as well, and also strawberry. Chemical controls are compounds used for the control of pests that might be natural or also synthetic in nature. And various crops are allowed to be used with various chemical compounds depending on where you're located and what you have available to you. Some of the new and very novel chemical compounds might also be things like enzymes or peptides. There's a product available in North America and might also become available in China soon. That is the omega kappa venom peptide of a very venomous spider found in Australia. However, this spider's venom has had the part that is toxic or venomous to humans removed, and it is only dangerous to insects. Other chemical compounds are much more deleterious and difficult for other organisms, not just pests, but also beneficial organisms. And if you apply these pesticides as well, you will kill both the beneficial biocontrols and the natural biocontrols that might be around your area, as well as the pests. And in some cases, this is not helpful and can be a waste of time and money and resources if misapplied when integrating these different techniques. There are also what are called cultural controls. In other words, they are the standard operating procedure of an agricultural cultivation area. And there are various facets about the environment that people can change when cultivating plants. Everything from the way that somebody harvests and the particular techniques that they use to harvest plants, to the structural and financial facets of the agricultural facility that makes it more streamlined, more data-driven, and more informationally based. All of these play a role in integrated pest management. You also have environmental facets like what's called psychrometrics, the interaction between humidity and temperature in the growing atmosphere. Labor operating procedure is incredibly important, and the way that things are achieved as goals will influence how IPM is more or less facilitated. Physical construction of an aquaponic center is incredibly important as well, and keeping the hygiene high is very important to keeping pathogens away from the facility. Without a comprehensive plan to deal with waste materials and other sort of buildup from aquaponics, like fish waste and plant debris, it's much more common for pathogens to enter and reside for a long period of time in the facility when being treated. And this can cost hundreds of thousands of yuan. Genetic controls are often not changeable for people who are cultivating plants, but they do have the opportunity to source seeds and other plant tissues from genetic stock that is resistant to pathogens or pests. There are also certain techniques that can be used that affect the genes of pests. One of them is called RNAi-mediated crop protection, or RNA interference. It's a process where plants express double-stranded RNAs that target specific genes in the pests, causing interference that can affect the pests in very bad ways. There's also genetic resistance that can be quantified and confirmed through genetic sequencing, and it's very possible that through breeding programs, pests can become much less attracted or much less facilitated by a plant's structure. There are also gene drives that can be used to affect the inheritance of good or bad traits in pest populations naturally, and this is very useful, especially for invasive species. Mechanical controls or physical controls are some of my favorite controls. This is primarily because they often have the greatest return on investment. Oftentimes they are physical barriers that are applied, like insect screen and that sort of a thing, that can keep insects from coming into a facility at all. And if maintained appropriately and applied correctly, they only have to be used once, and very rarely do they have to be maintained. And so very many pests can be taken out of the picture and gotten rid of and removed simply from not allowing them to come into the facility in the first place, thereby allowing there to be much more stable and healthy growth, and much less labor is used for treatment in the first place. In this way, it can be a cost-saving multiplier. There are also things that can be used like pheromone traps and other sorts of chemical traps that keep pests from effectively mating together or effectively getting into the crop. Pests can also be removed by hand, and sometimes this is a desperate last measure, but it can also be really useful in places where pest populations are high and one is preparing for a chemical application or a biocontrol application. By simply removing the worst and most infested plants, it can be a huge cost-saving boon. Clever uses of increased temperature or desiccation, as well as ultraviolet radiation, can negatively affect pests like various fungal pathogens, bacterial pathogens, and insects that might be trying to exist and overwinter in a facility, especially when that facility is cleared out of plants. The advantage of these techniques over chemical sterilants is that there is less of a problem for humans and it is a better rating for safety. At the same time, it can also affect insects in ways that a chemical sterilant might have trouble with. For example, a thrips or other insect would have a hard time escaping from the increase in temperature if it's trapped, whereas a chemical sterilant might not get every single small crevice in the facility. But what are the various advantages of integrated pest management? Well, IPM tends to be an important threshold-based decision management system, and it uses multiple tactics so that resistance is not likely to occur, like it does with chemical pesticide use that has been used for the last few decades. In the state of Alabama in North America, the average gain from vegetable integrated pest management is $19 for every dollar that is spent. By making use of chemical rotations and biocontrol agents that can live inside the crop for multiple weeks, and using these preventatively so that pest populations that come in are already attacked by biocontrol agents, bacteria, insects, predatory mites, wasps, and other sorts of organisms, allows the crop manager to not have to worry about these small populations that might come in, especially if those populations are further reduced through barriers and other sorts of clever uses like this. One of the pests that is becoming a major problem in North American and European hydroponics as well as aquaponics is the rice root aphid, which is considered to be originally from Asia, possibly the Japanese archipelago. The typical hosts are grasses and stone fruits like peach, plum, and cherry. These aphids tend to host switch between grass species and these fruit tree species. And like other aphids, they have major traits that make them very difficult to deal with. Primarily for aquaponics growers, they are water tolerant, but they also produce copious amounts of sugar, which attracts ants. This sugar is called honey, which is the sugar that they feed on from the plant, super concentrated. They also don't mate typically, and they telescope their generations, meaning that the females produce offspring without having to use males, and they are born pregnant, making the population grow incredibly quickly. Rice root aphids tend to do poorly at temperatures greater than 35 degrees Celsius. They also are susceptible to various pathogens, like the Rhopalsiphon virus, which may be able to severely reduce both their reduction, which may be able to severely reduce their lifespan and disrupt them in populations. Locale siphon virus is not currently commercially available, but there is research into more and more insect-mediating viruses, which is also very common in caterpillars. The moth larvae that are often found can be attacked with viruses that are very specific to the caterpillar. And these viruses do not infect other organisms. Unlike those viruses, this virus can actually exist inside of plants for as long as 1 to 2 weeks in some researched plant species. And it's possible that in the future, such a virus may become commercially available. And it's possible in the future that such a virus may become more commercially available because it is a specific control agent that is not likely to become an issue in the environment or become resistant. Fungus gnats are exceedingly common in hydroponics and also aquaponic systems. In various parts of the world, the dark green fungus gnats are the most prominent. And one of the major issues with the fungus gnats in general is that their larvae are able to vector various soil pathogens like Fusarium, Pythium. As larvae, they bore into both plant tissue, fungal tissue, and they don't require fungi or plants to complete their life cycle. Another potential problem pathogen is the lettuce chlorosis virus, originally from southwestern North America. It is an incurable virus, and in Chongqing, it was found in periwinkle in 2017. And in Shaogang, Shandong, it was found in tomatoes in 2017. The silverleaf whitefly, Bradysia tabasi, is the insect that vectors the virus. And in addition to these two crops, it is also found in the virus. And in addition to periwinkle and tomatoes, this particular species of insect is a known supervector with over 180 plant viruses. It is very common across the earth, and there are many subspecies or cryptic species that are impossible to distinguish without genetic sequencing. And they have various traits that allow them to resist pesticides and disperse in very unique ways. Chinese lettuce production in aquaponics and hydroponics may become quite threatened if treatment measures are not sustained for the silverleaf whitefly and the lettuce chlorosis virus. It's very important that proper biosecurity measures are taken up to limit the potential spread and invasion of this silverleaf whitefly virus vector. Armyworms in the genus Spodoptera are also a very common organism to find in Chinese agriculture. Especially recently, it has become a major problem. It is also a large problem in the African continent and the North American continent. The origin of this caterpillar is in the aquatropical and Indo-Malayan regions, and it's thought to have existed since around 18 million years ago. These are generalist species that are adapted to woody and herbaceous plants, like the Fabaceae, the Solanaceae, the Malvaceae. Utilizing screen barriers is one important way to keep moths from peering inside the facilities to lay their eggs. If they never lay their eggs in the first place, then the caterpillars very rarely are able to enter into the facilities themselves. The armyworms have many adaptations, and recent research has shown, both through their genetic sequencing and looking at their genes to find out where they have originated from, there are two major types. The type 1 mandible is serrated and is good for woody plant tissue, whereas the type 2 mandible is a chisel and is good for tough grassy tissues. Other species have no particular preference. I hope you enjoyed this short brief about various pests found in aquaponics in general, and those that might be specifically helpful for Chinese aquaponics. My name again is Matthew Gates of Zenthanol Consulting, and I'm very happy to help anyone with questions with regards to integrated pest management. Thank you very much. Have a good day. 谢谢.
All right. Thank you, Matthew. Do you have anything to say? Matthew, are you there? 大家有什么问题可以问一下啊？首先道个歉啊，这个会议
Sorry about that. I'm here now. Hi, I'm Matthew. Yeah, I saw in the chat they were talking about the Spodoptera, and also there was a question about whether the pest species in the United States are the same in China, and definitely not all of them, but a lot of species that are big pests will get to the United States of America, but also into other places like Europe. And I was careful to choose examples. I talked about examples of insects that could go to China and that have been found in China, but not everything.
I've typed the interpretation translation in the chat box. So 还有人有问题吗？
Hopefully that translation also works too.
Yeah, it works well.
Oh, good.
大家没有什么问题吗？这个植物种植方面，这种病害管理可是很难得的提问机会啊。
I really appreciate your help, honestly. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that people have.
It's our honor to have you.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Not many people talk about pest management. So nobody's asking questions, so I'm gonna ask a question.
Okay.
What type of either chemical or biological controls do not affect the beneficial insects?
That's a really good question. Like I said in the presentation, one of the really important things is to be able to integrate the different kinds of treatments. And in my experience, some of the most biocontrols that are good don't really interfere. I like to use predatory mites for some species. I also like to use fungi that eat insects as well. Those are really popular, and a lot of the cost of their use is starting to go down, so it's much more easy to use at large scale.
他说这个他常用的一些是像捕食螨之类的，以及真菌性的，或者前面也讲到了那种病毒性的这种生物控制手段，他们的话，它是非常有针对性的，对一些益虫没有太大的影响。有人问酵素可以控制虫害吗？这酵素的英文是什么？我倒不太清楚。One's asking about 酵素。One second. Like fermented.
What's shiatsu?
Yeah, I'm asking the same question.
Oh,
Some fermented bio, microbes.
oh, maybe they mean enzymes.
Enzyme is 活性酶. One second, I gotta find a translation. Yeah, that's right. Enzymes, ferment. Does they control any insects?
Absolutely. So in the U.S., it's very popular to use enzymes as a biopesticidal agent. I also see that who is this here? Baimuda. I don't know. They're asking about viruses as well, so I'd like to answer both questions. So for the shiaosu, for the enzymes, it's very popular to use them as a way to destroy the exoskeleton of insects. and also to affect microbes like pathogenic fungi and bacteria. But one of the tricks to using them is that the water has to be the right pH and the temperature has to be right too. If the water is too cold, the enzymes don't activate very well. Oh, and for the viruses, the most common way to prevent viruses is to prevent the vector. In much of the research literature I've read, it's very important to control the vector. The viruses are typically incurable, so we have to attack the vector and keep it from coming in the first place.
You mean the whitefly?
For example, the whitefly, but for other insects too, it's the same problem. If they vector a virus, yeah, we have to kill the insect. And we have to keep it from coming in first. So exclusion is the most important thing.
And no one's asking, so I ask another one. Neem oil is very commonly used. Does it hurt any beneficial insects?
Absolutely. And the active ingredient as a duractin is becoming more and more popular. The way that it's often used, in my experience, to make it even more successful is to combine it with another biopesticide like a fungus that kills insects or something like this. But the problem is that azadirachtin is broad spectrum. It's even also a little bit antimicrobial and can negatively affect some beneficial fungi and bacteria. It's also important to note that sometimes neem products will come from sources that use systemic pesticides. And so what happens is that the product is actually not just neem oil, but neem oil and other broad spectrum insecticides. And I've had problems in the past where people have bought products from, for example, India, and the neem trees that they get the product from have been sprayed with another compound or many more compounds. And then they get in trouble because the US Agricultural Department will test their product and find these bad chemicals. But to answer your question, azadirachtin does affect a lot of soft-bodied beneficial insects like Orius, the minute pirate bug.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question.
One is asking, how do you control the humidity when you grow strawberry in aquaponics?
Say that one more time.
How do you control the humidity?
Oh, humidity. Okay,
Yes.
okay.
When you grow strawberry, because it's very vulnerable to some, yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good question. Oh, it's a hard question to answer because everyone has sort of a different situation, even within aquaponics. In my experience, ventilation tends to be the most common way that people get rid of excess humidity. There's a old strawberry. There's actually very close to where I live. There's a few large fields of strawberries from Driscoll's, the company Driscoll, and those are all outdoor. They don't have to worry about that. But ventilation is probably the most common way to use it in an indoor facility. I've also known people who use what are called wet walls, and those help to control the temperature, which can also help with the humidity severity as well. But most of my experience, I mean, if you're in a place where it's much less hot and it gets a lot colder and it gets a lot more humid in general, then it can be a little bit more difficult. Swampy places can have huge issues. some of my clients in Florida have tons of difficulty and basically cannot defeat humidity without a dehumidification machine.
I think there's one more question up there. Where is it? 寄壁植物. The companion plant, I think that's what he's talking about. Does it have any beneficial effects?
Yeah, definitely. My favorite companion plant to use with my clients, especially for predatory mites that eat pollen, like I mentioned in the presentation, is pepper plants. We like to use ornamental pepper plants. And the reason is because the ornamental pepper plants have flowers that last longer and they make more of them. And all of those flowers produce pollen, and the predatory mite females can feed on the pollen, and they can produce a lot of eggs really quickly. They don't have to fight for prey protein. And in research, it shows that the reproduction rate for predatory mites that eat pollen can be 3 times or 5 times more in laboratory conditions.
还有其他问题吗？如果没有问题的话呢，这一场就结束了，因为也超时了啊。Looks like no more questions. Do you have any last words?
I have a couple. I have one question. Is it possible for me to receive this recording? I'd love to have it as a reference.
Of course, I'm recording it, and I will upload to the Google Drive so you can download.
I really appreciate that, because it's a passion for me to be able to help as many people as possible, and I think this would be an excellent reference. Yeah, so I appreciate that. And if anyone has any problems or questions, I would love for them to reach out to me. My Mandarin is very poor now, but that doesn't stop me from trying to help people. And I know that China has tons of agricultural, I mean, historically grand agricultural potential. So how could I deny that, right? How could I not work with such an important part of human agriculture?
Yeah, of course. 他说大家有问题呢，可以欢迎联系他。虽然他这几年不在中国生活了，中文退步了，但是不影响为大家服务啊。这个中国这个农业是一个非常发达的农业国家，他非常希望和国内的大家交流或者合作，都可以。他的联系方式在开场的时候啊都有了，大家想要联系他的都可以联系。Okay, it's an honor to have you. The next session has started, so we're gonna jump to the next session. I will send you the video as soon as possible. Yeah, Google Drive. I don't have a account yet, so yeah, I'll try to do it tonight and send you the link.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I'd love to come back to another conference and speak again. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. We'll probably see you next year.
Okay, well, I'm happy to do it.
拜拜。这一场就结束了，大家可以去下一场。